This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Athletics Per Diem Made Easy, sponsored by US Bank. I'm Lisa Alessandro, Head of Prepaid Marketing for US Bank, and I'll be your moderator for today. Please note that you're able to use the Q&A box throughout the presentation to ask questions, which we will address at the end if time permits. So I'd like to introduce Vaadia, Prepaid Payments Consultant for US Bank, who will kick us off with an overview of Per Diem cards. Then our two panelists, Katie Burd with CSU Long Beach, and Ken Halpin with Purdue University will share with us the real-life benefits of the Per Diem cards for college programs. Tal, please take it away.
Great. Can you guys hear me okay? I hope so. So Lisa, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm excited to share some information with you, both in terms of the benefits to the university athletics administration and also to the end users, the actual students that you would enroll in these per diem cards and transfer funds to, so the students could have access to their travel allowances through these specialized athletic per diem cards. So let's begin and cover some of the benefits associated with this prepaid athletics card program. First of all, once you launch or implement a card program like this, then there's never a need again for teams to have to rely on checks or, more importantly, to carry large amounts of cash. I've worked in higher education with universities for many years, and I have met with universities all around the country. And one of the common themes that I often hear is how laborious it can be and kind of an awkward process for coaches to have to carry sometimes duffel bags full of cash and then hand out, those cash allowances to those students while you're traveling. That process will be completely eliminated and streamlined with a reloadable prepaid debit card. In terms of payment, it's very easy while you're traveling to disperse the per diem expenses for the students. Once they have these cards, they can use these cards at any Visa merchant location nationwide and even globally. So these cards can be used both domestically and internationally. So if you have a team, and this often happens in athletics, sometimes teams do travel internationally. They can access their allowances on these cards while traveling internationally as well. There's no corporate underwriting with a reloadable prepaid debit card, a Visa prepaid debit card. The funds on these cards is typically money that is deposited basically by the university for the student to use. It is not a credit line. Because it's not a credit card, the students are not using a credit card. The students are actually spending money that's given to them by the university. There's no underwriting required. And because these cards, as I mentioned, are not credit cards, they are debit cards. There's no credit check. So there's no credit check for the university or underwriting for the university because the university is not borrowing any money for this. And there's no credit check for the students receiving these cards. Just like, if any one of us applied for a credit card, behind the scenes, there's a credit check that we're probably all familiar with. That does not apply to these debit cards. These are debit cards. Easy access to funds by both the athletes and the staff. And this could include both, point of sale, online, over the phone transactions, even cash access. If you guys wanted to make cash access available for the card users, ultimately the students, maybe even coaches that are using the cards, they'll be able to conveniently access cash at a point of sale, at an ATM. They can even walk into a bank branch and withdraw cash if they needed, if you were to make cash access an option and they needed cash. With this card program, you do have the ability to suspend these cards. So, quick example, let's say a card user, typically a student, right, with a team that's traveling, lost their card, misplaced it. They don't know where it is. They don't know that they necessarily permanently lost the card. Maybe it fell out of their bag in their dorm or in wherever they're staying, and they need to look for it. You can suspend that card. You can freeze that card, meaning that once you do freeze the card, if someone that's not the user of that card happens to pick it up and attempts to use it, when it's frozen, the card can't be used. So you're mitigating any potential fraudulent transaction if the card is potentially lost. And that's one of the many applications that you can apply to suspending the card if you ever do need to or want to suspend the card. Once you suspend the card, you can unsuspend it. So it can be as permanent or as temporary as you need it to be. You can also, with these cards, similar to credit cards, again, remember, these are not credit cards, these are debit cards. But similar to credit cards, if you want to, you can, as a university administration, you can add what we call merchant category blocks to these cards. So if you don't want students to be able to use the cards at certain merchant categories like liquor stores, you can turn that off on the card. So you have that control over the card program. And then last, there are no setup fee. We're discussing, in terms of US Bank, the product is called the expense card. That's a reloadable prepaid debit card. And for the university, there's no expense, no costs. US Bank will not invoice you for anything for the duration of the program. It's entirely complimentary and free to the university, which is very appealing. Free is always good, right? So let's talk specifically about the university benefits with implementing a unique and specialized program like this. And in the next slide, we'll wrap it up by talking about the cardholder benefit, the students that are using, or even potentially coaches, anybody that the university would register for a card, their experience and the benefits of using that card. So let's start on this slide or continue on this slide with the client benefits. You have a choice of a number of different programs for this per diem card program, the expense card, that we can configure for you. You can choose to, and I briefly mentioned it already, you can choose to either turn on cash access, so we can configure the program where the user of the card can actually withdraw cash for free at an approved ATM network. They can also get cash back at a purchase if they want to, as long as the merchant offers cash back, and that's a free transaction. And they can also get cash back at any Visa member bank location. So it doesn't have to be a US Bank branch. US Bank doesn't have bank locations in all 50 states. There isn't a single bank in the country that has retail bank locations in all 50 states. We recognize that. We want you to have a good experience. If you do want to walk into a branch, you can. Again, any Visa member bank location, there are about 100,000 bank locations nationwide where you can withdraw cash using these cards. So again, to sum it up, cash access is one option. And then the other option that we can configure this program is no cash access. Some universities, for whatever reason, every university is a little different. And procedures tend to vary from university to university. You all have your own unique procedures. And for some universities, they don't want to make cash access available on the per diem cards. And if that's the case, we can turn that off. So we can configure the program so there's no cash access. Account access for the university administrators. So what we're going to basically do is we're going to host a card portal for you guys as administrators. And from that card portal, you'll be able to fund the cards and you'll be able to register users for the cards. And so as administrators, if you want to, there is nearly an unlimited number of ways that we can configure this card portal for you. So as an example, I'll give you an example. Let's say you just want one funding account that you're going to use to fund these individual cards for the entire athletic program. We can configure the system that way. Alternatively, as a university athletic program, let's say you want to segregate or separate the funding for each individual team. So the football team has their own funding account, and the basketball team has their own individual funding account. And you can't commingle the funds from the football team to the basketball or to the baseball team or the soccer team. Every one of them, each individual team has its own dedicated funding account with its own separate funds. So we can have one athletic umbrella, or we can create hierarchies for you guys where you can separate the different teams. Instant funding for these per diem cards, the US Bank expense card. With instant funding, as university administrators, you are able to fund these cards in real time, on demand, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are no blackout periods. So you can fund the cards on a weekend, during the holidays, in the middle of the night, 24 hours a day, no restrictions. Let's talk a little bit about your convenience in replacing lost cards. So when you register an individual for a card, there are two different cards that you can use. You can choose to have US Bank mail a card directly to the recipient of the card. Usually takes about 7 to 10 business days to get a card in the mail, usually about a week to get the card in the mail. You have another option. And by the way, a card that's being delivered by mail can be delivered directly to an individual's address or to a university address. I will tell you from personal experience, and I've worked with a lot of universities around the country, and I continue to work with a lot of universities around the country. Typically for athletics, they all like to receive the cards at one centralized location within the athletics administration, simply because we all know, a student address is not always reliable. Students tend to be transient. And so universities typically like to identify a central, secure location to have these cards sent to. But that option and that decision and choice is up to you. You can have the card shipped directly to the individual, or you can have the card shipped to a university address. The other option is, let's say a situation comes up on short notice, and you have a student in your office that you need to hand out a card to, and you can't afford to wait a week for that card to be sent to the university address or to that individual's address. You can use an instant issue card, kind of similar to the instant funding, except that you're instantly issuing a card. These are per diem cards that you as administrators can store on site. And once you register an individual, which takes less than a couple of minutes, once you register an individual for a card, you can then hand them an instant issue card. Instant issue card is a card that you store on site, and you just simply hand it to that individual. Those instant issue cards, by the way, can also be used to replace lost cards. Let's say a team is traveling. As long as the coaches carry a couple of extra instant issue cards, these are empty shells. They don't have any value. There's no liability to the university, the coach, or anyone. There's nothing. If someone loses one of these instant issue cards before they're registered, there isn't really anything that anyone can use that card for, except the university can then authorize and turn that card on. But the point is, let's say a team is traveling, as long as a coach or staff is carrying a few extra cards with them, instant issue cards. If a student loses a card, you can just hand them the instant issue card. The system will then automatically transfer the funds from the lost card to the instant issue card, and the student doesn't have to wait till they get back on campus to get that money returned or to have access to that money so they can use it again. Flexibility. There's a lot of flexibility with our card platform for the administrators. And one of the many controls that you have within this platform, within this program, is once you fund cards, if you need to, you can also defund the cards, or you can sweep funds off the cards. Example, if you haven't picked up on it, I love to share examples. So let's say you funded a team. Let's say you funded the basketball team, the entire team, because they're traveling in a few hours. And then for whatever reason, and maybe basketball is a bad example. Let's use football as a better example because it's more outdoors usually. Let's say it's the football team traveling. Inclement weather conditions roll in and you're forced to cancel the game because of bad weather conditions. This happens in athletics. And so you funded the cards, no problem. You can drill into these cards and sweep the funds off the cards and then refund them for the next trip. Scheduling options specifically for funding. Again, one of the many flexibilities along that same flexibility theme, one of the many flexibilities that are available to you through our platform and our software is the ability to either fund the cards in real time, on demand, instantly, immediately. And when you fund the cards immediately, the funds are also available for the card user to spend the money immediately. Remember, and you can do that's available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The other option is you can post-date the funding. Let's say you have a team traveling in 2 weeks. You can upload a simple Excel spreadsheet funding file with instructions of what cards you want to fund, how much money you want to fund each card, what day you want that those cards funded, and exactly what time. And our system will do the rest. So all you need to do is upload the file, choose on the calendar what day you want the cards funded and what time. And then once that time arrives or that day arrives, then our system will automatically fund those cards. If you ever need to, you can cancel an advanced funding. So let's say you have a team that you're funding 2 weeks from now. But a week from now, something changed and a couple of students won't be traveling. You can edit, you can modify that file and you can re-upload it. Or you can just cancel a future dated file if you need to, up to 15 minutes before that file is scheduled to be processed. Remember, you have the ability to sweep unused funds or any funds off the cards as long as there are funds on the card. Well, we realize in order for you to be able to sweep funds off the cards, you need to have transparency into the card balance. And so because of that, through our platform, you can pull a report or you can drill into a card and you can see the card balance. And then once you know what the card balance is, you know exactly how much money is available for you to sweep off the card. You can sweep the entire balance on the card off, or you can sweep a certain amount that you want off the card. And then online portal, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to host a card portal that you're going to use to manage these accounts. Basically, there are three functions you're going to mostly use the online portal, the card portal for. You're going to use it to register new cards. You're going to use it to fund cards, maybe sweep funds off the cards if you need to. And then there's also reporting available to you. You can download or you can view reports. Reports about all the funding transactions, reports about card status, and card data if you need to. All of that will be available to you through our online portal. And then the last slide, the program is in terms. So now we're shifting over to cardholder benefits. We just wrapped up your benefits as a university. Let's quickly discuss cardholder benefits, convenience. These cards for the students that are using the cards, as I mentioned earlier, they can use the cards anywhere Visa is accepted. If you make cash access available to them, they can also withdraw cash for free, regardless of where they are traveling domestically. They can use the card at a point of sale. They can use it for PIN-based transactions. They can use it online. They can use it to make a purchase over the phone. They have complete access and versatility in terms of how they want to make a purchase. Text and email alerts. Through our platform, the students can log into their own cards, kind of like any one of us would log into a bank account, right? They can view transactions on their cards. They can print a statement if they want to on the card, but they can check their balance if they need to. But also, there are about a dozen different alerts that they can turn on. These are bilingual alerts, so they can choose to receive those in English or in Spanish. They can be alerts sent to their mobile device. They can be an email alert. It can be a combination of both. And as I mentioned, there are about a dozen different alerts, everything from a low balance alert to anytime the university makes a deposit on the card, they can turn on an alert to see a deposit. Anytime a purchase is made, if a purchase is declined, they can get an alert. So again, there are about a dozen different alerts that the student can turn on. Two-way text alerts. Two-way text alerts, very popular with what do we call the current generation? I think the gig generation. But they love using two-way text alerts. All that is, it's a simple process. If a student really, if a user or a student needs to, for instance, they want to know what their balance is, and they want to do it quickly. They're in line. They want to purchase, some snacks. They want to make sure they have enough money on their card to purchase those snacks. They can simply text US Bank and use each one of these two-way text alerts has its own acronym or code. For balance, it's pound B for balance AL. And then as quickly as you can blink your eye, that student will get a message right back from US Bank that lets them know exactly what the current available balance is on that card that they can spend up to. By the way, the students cannot spend more than what's available on that card for them. So whatever you make available on the card, they can spend up to that amount. If they try to spend more than what's available on the card, the transaction will get declined. They'll get rejected. Cardholder website, as I mentioned, the students, just like a traditional bank account, the student can log in. They have full transparency. They can check balances, view transactions, print statements, turn and turn off those toggle on and off those email alerts. All of those things are available to the cardholders, students, coaches, whoever the university chooses to enroll in these cards. Safe. I don't think there's much that we need to explain about safety, right? You're migrating from a cash type of transaction to an electronic secure card transaction. If a card is lost, no problem. A card is replaced. It can be replaced through the mail, or it can be replaced with an instant issue card. If you lose cash, alternatively, we all know the outcome of losing cash, right? More than likely, you're never going to find that money again. All right, and then cardholder support. The cardholders, the students that receive these cards, again, faculty, coaches, whoever the university chooses to enroll in the cards, they have access to 24 hours a day, 7-day-a-week cardholder support. They can speak to a live agent if they have a question, if they need help with something. If there's fraud on the card, we don't see that very often, but if there's fraud, they can report the fraud to customer service, and customer service can assist with that. So again, customer service is available 24 hours a day. Our phone line is bilingual. It's both English and in Spanish, so they can choose to speak to a live agent in English or Spanish. In addition to that, we support 200 foreign languages. And so a cardholder can actually call customer service. And if they speak some other language other than English or Spanish, they can just inform customer service what language they speak. Our customer service rep will then conference in someone that will translate in your cardholder or in your student's native language, whatever that may be. And Lisa, I think that wraps up this section of the discussion.
Great, Tal. Thank you so much. So now I'd like to turn it over to our panelists, Katie Burd and Ken Halpin, to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Katie. So Katie, please take yourself off mute and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Burd. Currently oversee all the financial operations at Long Beach State University. And most of my experience today is going to be related back to my previous institution at the University at Buffalo, as we're working through implementation of this same program at Long Beach State.
Great, thank you. Now, Ken.
Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on what time zone you're in. Ken Halpin, Purdue University. I'm our Deputy Athletics Director. I've been here for just a little bit over a year. Come here by way of Winthrop University down in South Carolina. And prior to that, I worked at Eastern Washington University up in the great state of Washington. Happy to be here with everybody.
Thank you both so much for being here. So Ken, we're going to start off with you, and we're going to ask, what made you decide to adopt a reloadable prepaid card program?
So when I arrived at Purdue, we already had our reloadable card program implemented. But while I was at Winthrop, we actually were researching quite heavily the implementation of a cardholder program. And then my story is a little unique because if you go way back prior to my time at Eastern Washington University, I actually worked for US Bank and had part of the experience. I actually worked with Tal in trying to sell this program specifically in higher education. And so I got to see the benefits on the bank side of it, as well as the benefits on the user side of it from a consumer standpoint. The biggest thing I'll say for us, what we kept talking about, because I don't care if you're, here at Purdue, we just have so many human resources for all the needs we have, or if you're, just up the road from us in Illinois at Division III Knox College, you still have to give money to student athletes while they're traveling, and cash is a really complicated thing to just hand over to an 18 to 22-year-old by way of first gathering a big lump of it before you then disperse it out. And so giving our student athletes and our staff cards that can be easily managed from an administrative standpoint, then no matter how many human beings you have managing the program, it's something that can easily be executed, at least when compared to the complexities and the security risks tied to cash. So that's the biggest reason for us here at Purdue.
Great, thank you. Katie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say from my experience at the University at Buffalo, I think it was the first week I was on the job and really recognized there was so much cash changing hands and the process that was involved with that. Coaches going to an ATM, taking cash out, turning around, turning a check back into the university, just the process involved. So it wasn't until about a year after starting there that we were finally able to kind of move things forward in this direction, and just really just having a need from the universities then to get to a better internal controls, which unfortunately with cash, we weren't seeing great results with. So it kind of took away some of those risk factors and made it a win-win for both athletics and the university.
Great. So Katie, can you describe a little bit about your internal process for onboarding and implementing the program?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, from my experience, we kind of, what I would categorize it as almost 2 implementation phases, what we went through. We had the back end internal aspects of working with US Bank to learn the system, have training, go through the kickoff meeting is what I would say. And we really needed to define our internal process, because this was going to be a large change from what we were currently doing. So what is the business office responsibility? What is the coach's responsibility? What does that all look like on the back end? What is our segregation of duties? What are our internal controls? So I think we took a lot of time to really define the process, do process mapping, task owners, when we were implementing the first stages of this. And then we go into kind of the second phase, which, I would categorize kind of rolling out to the teams and the cardholders. And our approach to that was kind of just coming to a team meeting, distributing cards, meeting with all the student athletes to explain what the program was, going through the communication of how the program worked, when they may experience a decline transaction, why that would be. Also, as kind of Tal mentioned, the cardholder website, we actually in that meeting had them sign in, register, log in, so they knew exactly where to go to find their balance in terms of that. So and then obviously it got refined as we rolled out to more teams, and you weren't onboarding a whole team year over year. You might just be onboarding the freshmen, the transfers. So we kind of redefined that implementation. So it was always an ongoing training. And then I think once we were implemented, it was coming up with those training resources that we didn't have to do face-to-face meetings as often. And the program kind of just rolled out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think in terms of the implementation, it was super smooth from our end. I think our biggest obstacle from a state university is just the challenges you have to go through to get in place to get to implementation. It's the contracting piece that can take time.
It's funny. I'll add a brief anecdotal story to the internal process is I saw one of the comments about, handing all this cash to the coaches. I actually reflect back on when I was a student. I was a Division III student athlete. I think I'm old enough to say a long time ago. And cash would be dispersed to coaches. And I think I can say this because I had a coach who would enjoy on some of the bus rides entering into some friendly card games with some of our student athletes, may or may not have been me included, and some money might have been involved. And then there were actually per diem disbursements not distributed until after the card game was over. That's the kind of thing, obviously you trust the human beings involved with the process, but this card process removes elements like that from even the possibility of happening. Because again, especially for a smaller institution where you're counting on so many human beings involved in the process, the more you take that out of it and get the money itself loaded specifically on the card for the student athlete, you can trust that it got there safely without any interference in the process. So I was thinking about that internal process. Little details like that are big ones in my mind. So.
Okay. So now, Ken, do you personally use a card, and how has that experience been?
Yeah, I do. This is my Purdue reloadable prepaid per diem card. I think it's great. I love, even if I'm using it around town, if I've got leftover, I like pulling it out just to show folks, for us at Purdue, our branding is a big deal. We have the Motion P anywhere and everywhere we can find it. We're very proud of protecting the Motion P itself and where it's at. So for us, it's a big deal. We love it. Our staff and our student athletes love that experience. And, we often get, gosh, how do you get that card? And so for us, it's a very positive part of the program.
So share your card again real quick. Do you have your logo on that card?
We do.
Yeah,
yes.
You do. Okay. So do you prefer the logo on all your cards, or can you get custom artwork, or you just required the logo, it looks like, correct?
For us, we like to simplify. We're not, we're a Midwestern institution, very blue collar. A lot of our donors and supporters are farmers. That's a big part of and then outside of that, it's engineers and really hard blue collar work. So for us, the Motion P is the most simple and most impactful and most internationally recognizable element of our university. So even if we could get really creative with our artwork, we always want to focus on the Motion P.
Great. Okay. Katie, so can you describe your school's transition from cash to cards, and how did the students feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret that, today's students come to college very familiar with card products and typically prefer it over cash nowadays. So from our end, our school's transition from cash to cards was very seamless, very easily adopted. Student coaches alike, I think there was we took some work off of the coaches' hands and took a little bit of their risk of carrying around large amounts of cash. And so I think it was very well received, and I think it also, I would add, at the time, the University of Buffalo was really looking to go cashless as an institution. So it was a really easy buy-in from our, university financial management partners, in implementation. So I think from that regard, I think it was a win-win for everyone.
Okay. Would you say it was an easy process or difficult to issue the fund cards? How did that work for you with funding?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, as long as there are funds available in the master funding account, it was very easy to issue cards and fund cards. It really took away the need for kind of the face-to-face interaction too. And I can kind of relate it back to COVID, when we were all kind of working from home and we were starting to bring student athletes back, and the business office was still working from home. We could still fund cards and get funds in the hands of our student athletes as they were kind of trickling back to campus, and what those needs were. And at a time where they really didn't want to do team meals and they wanted the athletes to be kind of segregated and on their own, I would use kind of that as a good example. But issuing and funding individual, manually, you can do it. I know, as I was preparing for this presentation, my husband's like, yeah, just think about those times when you were laying on the couch on a Saturday night and you're funding some cards because some emergency scenario came up, so we always had the ability to manually do it. Typically our business process was doing a bulk upload process where we were funding all of the cards at one time. It kind of created a better audit trail for us. But yeah, I think in terms of issuing and reloading, very seamless from our end.
Good. So Ken, do you have anything to add to that regarding funding?
No, I would say no, that's pretty good coverage. And again, talking about Purdue's transition from cash to cards, I wasn't here for that, so I wouldn't have as healthy of a perspective.
Okay. Right. So Ken,
Hey,
how do
Lisa?
students like, yeah,
Lisa, can we pause for a brief moment and answer a couple of questions for Katie and Ken?
sure. Take it away.
Okay. So first question, Katie, Ken, feel free to weigh in. An anonymous attendee was asking, do either of you use the prepaid card for funds giving to student athlete hosts during official visits?
I'll let Katie handle that one.
Well, I'll say from my experience at the University of Buffalo, we did not. And it really was at the preference of our compliance office. So we had explored it. That question did often come to us from coaches, but we opted to not go in that direction and only utilized it for really team travel per diems or per diems needed, summer break, winter break, those scenarios. So we did not utilize it in the student athlete hosts sense.
And I will add that I have had universities as recently as just a few weeks ago choose to use the cards for that exact application for student athlete hosts and ambassadors on campus. So that's really entirely up to you guys as the university administration. These cards can be used pretty much for anything that you want to. You're not supposed to, you don't load payroll funds on these cards, but anything that's non-payroll, like like a per diem or some kind of allowance that you want to give a host or students traveling for games, obviously you can definitely use the cards for those applications. And then Katie, I think this question is probably better for you to answer, though Ken, you are more than welcome to weigh in and add some insight if you have any for this particular question. But Nicole, and I'm sorry, Nicole, I'm going to attempt to pronounce your last name, McTaggue. It's spelled McTague. Nicole, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. More than likely I did. But Nicole's question, Katie, is from an audit standpoint, how do you ensure students only receive money for games that they attend? Do you know what best practices are, in parentheses? Is there anything associated with the card portal, or would that be a separate internal document with sign-offs for each game?
Yeah, so I mean, how we handled that, and it was very similar in the cash process. The previous cash process that we utilized was, coaches taking the cash, student athletes signing a piece of paper saying they received X dollar amount. So we really continued that process, even though they were receiving the money directly on their cards. It was kind of our internal back end to say the student athlete acknowledges that they received it on their card. I can't speak to if that's best practice or it was just, more sense of our way of how we did it previously and kind of integrating it. Because I agree that is a challenge to kind of look at. And, from an audit standpoint, we were always looking at the double dipping kind of team goes on the road, coach buys the meal, and then we're also giving per diem. What are those checks and balances? And we utilized Concur travel and expense So we were kind of actually at the point that when I was leaving there, looking at some implementation of how do we upload the form that they were signing to the travel and expense report from that trip, so that there's kind of eyes on kind of both pieces of it. So you know, I don't know if I answered your question, Nicole. I think it's definitely a challenge, you know, when you have kind of two different processes going on at the same time. But, you know, there's many institutions, I think, that experience that same challenge, and it shouldn't be a challenge that stops you from exploring the program more.
Ken, anything you want to add before I move on to the next question?
Not at all.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Katie. Next question from Lindsay Bracken. Katie and or Ken, feel free to answer. The question is, we went from coach carrying all the cash for the team to the students, but as soon as we did that, our accounting department said that per diems need to go through the student account to be taxed. Is that still the case with these cards? Would it have to go through the student account prior to being loaded to this card? And before Katie and or Ken answer, I can tell you that these funds are not taxable funds. So you shouldn't have to go through that process. You simply register a student for a card and you fund it with the money that is allocated for their per NCAA requirements. It's money that's allocated for them to spend during their while they're traveling for a team game. And then Katie, I'll pass it on to you, and then Ken, if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our end, we didn't view the cards any different than cash. We were handing out the cash before. It was just a different mechanism to get the funds in the hands of the student athletes. So for us, it did not run through a student account. There was no tax liability. So I don't know if Ken, you have anything else to add on your end?
I'm just trying to anticipate the premise behind the question. So like for us, you know, we live in a state that has income tax. And so if something is income, then it's taxed. But per diem is no different than if your institution books you a flight to send you to a conference. That's not income. That's a process of your function as an employee. And so for us, per diem is provided because of institutionally sanctioned travel, therefore is not income, therefore is not taxable income. And so my assumption is that person would be interpreting this as taxable income, and that becomes a business office question. And that's my best guess at that example.
Thank you both. Lisa, go ahead and please continue with the panelist questions.
Okay, we just have a few more for the panelists. So what is your experience with replacing lost cards? And I think Katie will take this one.
Right, yeah. So, you know, we anticipated actually the need to replace lost cards often. Just, I guess, our experience with student athletes is they lose things, they misplace things, they forget things. But honestly, we were pleasantly surprised that we weren't replacing cards that often, and they were treating it, you know, they knew that their cash was getting funded on it. So I think they took it very seriously. Obviously, you don't want to lose your cash, so they protected their card as best they could. Now, that's not to say that it didn't happen. And, you know, kind of as I mentioned in that kickoff meeting, we kind of communicated the means to report lost or stolen cards. And actually when we were implementing at the University of Buffalo, we did a lot of development in ARMS, so our compliance software, and created some of our process workflows through ARMS, and one of which was reporting the lost or stolen card through there, mainly because the student athletes were already familiar with that platform for other compliance needs. And then it would just route directly to our business office, because the students weren't always good about calling US Bank, calling the number to report their card lost or stolen. It was kind of a second chance for us to catch it. And then it also initiated our process for reordering them a new personalized card. Or if they were out on the road, we would get in contact with the coach and say, hey, coach, do you have an instant issue card that we can immediately transfer the funds from their existing card over to the instant issue card. So from our end, I think it was a very seamless process.
Yeah, and I would add for us, it's not what you would think. Like, student athletes go through orientation and you hand them their compliance paperwork or their athletic training paperwork. You expect them to keep that. Of course, they're going to lose it. It's not as important to them. Expecting them not to lose their phone. Of course, they're not going to lose their phone unless they're out on a boat and drop it in the lake, or or unless it's stolen. They're not going to lose the things that are important to them. And this is just like cash, except if you drop your wallet in the lake, that cash never comes back. If you drop your wallet in the lake, this card can be replaced. And so it's not been that common that, we lose them occasionally, but that's more tied to bigger things like losing a wallet or potential theft. Our student athletes and our staff treat them like money. And so because there's money on it, that's pretty important to them.
I think the only other thing I would add too is we did encourage the students. Most of them would travel with their phone. If they weren't traveling with their phone, I'd be shocked. So uploading it to, the Apple Wallet opportunity so that they always had it on them, because they may forget their wallet, but they're never going to forget their phone.
True. All right, so this last question that we have would be for both of you. So would you recommend a program like this, a reloadable prepaid program, to other universities and college programs? So Ken, we'll start with you.
Yeah, just unless you're listening to this and you're thinking I'm telling you what, cash is just so much better and fun and we enjoy the experience, unless you're sitting there and if you are, I'm really curious as to your justifications. I can't see why you wouldn't have that. There are solutions out there. We love US Bank. Their customer service is great. They, other than TAL, they're all incredible. I'm kidding. But the solution itself, I don't know how you survive without it. And I know there's a lot of opportunity for evolution there with, furthering an experience with an app or things like that. But for us, it's been spectacular. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, me too. Like I mentioned, I'm now at Cal State Long Beach, and so this is my second go at implementing this same program at another institution now, and I have enough, not enough good things to say about it. And I think just getting away from the cash, I think it was 3 weeks into my job here, and our track coach was, thought he had lost $4,000 cash advance that he was going to be personally on the hook for. And so I think it's taking that risk away from coaches and holding them not personally responsible. I just don't know, again, kind of echoing Ken's comments, I don't know why you wouldn't consider a program. Again, US Bank isn't the only one out there, but I've had great experiences implementing it at 2 institutions now.
Thank you. All right, Tal, I'm going to kick it back over to you so we can wrap up any additional Q&As that have come through, and then we'll be finished. So over to you, Tal.
Thanks, Lisa. So we do have a few questions. I'm scrolling through them. Bear with me. Let's go to, this is another anonymous attendee. And what they're asking is, can you talk about which part of your athletics department handles the software issuing of funds step? So Katie or Ken, you guys can probably weigh in on that. Is it your finance office, or do you have the coaches set up with system access to issue the funds?
We use our finance office. We're also a pretty big department compared to most. Not everybody has a finance department, but it's primarily a single administrator that's the gatekeeper for the issuance from there.
Yeah, and from my experience, we issued it from the athletics business office. The initial ACH transfer was initiated with University Financial Management, essentially transferring a large sum of money over to fund the particular cards, and that might only happen on a monthly basis, bi-monthly basis, depending on how funds were depleted. So there was kind of that cross collaboration, but no, coaches did not have access. in terms of coaches would submit from our end an ARMS form saying what they wanted to be funded to individual cards. And then the business office would actually initiate check rosters, make sure people who were supposed to be traveling, that there wasn't any crossover there, and miss people getting funds that shouldn't have been getting funds for certain trips. So the initial request really starts with the coaches, but there's other steps along the way, from my experience.
Okay, thanks, Katie and Ken. Another question from an anonymous attendee, and it's a best practice question for you guys, Katie, Ken. Do you all limit the card use to restaurants only, or do you open it up to Walmart, grocery stores, etc.? What is your take on using it for snacks? Because, and in parentheses, bringing up the liquor store comment from earlier, how do you control that? And I'll just add real quick. The way you control that is we can add a block on these cards so that the card cannot be used at a liquor store. So that's how you restrict, or that's how you control that from a university administration. Now, Katie and Ken, please feel free to add some additional insight to that question if you like.
Katie, go ahead.
So I would say we didn't limit, we treated it the same as if we were handing them cash. So we didn't know what they were spending their money on before. And quite frankly, we didn't even want to know what the transaction history was, and didn't often go in to see where funds were being spent, because we were really truly trying to treat it as, hey, we handed you this cash before, we didn't care where you spent it, so why are we all of a sudden caring now? So yeah, ideally they're spending it and fueling their bodies appropriately and spending it on the things that we have intended them to spend it on. But we weren't controlling, we weren't looking at the back end in those details, because we had no ability to do that previously.
Yeah, we're the same way. I mean, like, I could see examples where if you were sending a student group for an academically driven trip, and you want to make sure and control what distribution goes where, I get that. But for us, we're handing, once the cash is loaded, it in our mind belongs to the student athletes and the staff. And, there are plenty of mechanisms in place. So like, they're going to spend it on whatever they can and want to legally. Liquor stores already check IDs, so it's not up to us to enforce whether or not somebody underage is purchasing. And then, we train our student athletes from an educational standpoint on what is best for their personal mental health, physical health, and elite performance. And so we don't get into the business of controlling what is and isn't, what it is and isn't utilized for. And we're of the opinion that because it's a card, cash actually makes it easier to go purchase things that are illegal. Now, they're not stopped. We would have to turn off the ATM function to stop them from getting cash out and purchasing things that are illegal. But we're offering a sentiment of trust that once money is in the hands of our student athletes, it belongs to them and what they choose to do with it. Our best strategy is education at that point in what's best for their future.
And I guess I would just add on to that too. The cards also kind of gave us that mechanism to also communicate. I know we had some coaches ask, hey, what are the balances of my, because, they may be getting student athletes coming to them saying like, hey, coach, I need money to eat. I need money to eat. Well, and then coach looks at the back end and they haven't used their card and they've got, a couple $100 sitting on their card. It was helpful in that sense, to bridge that gap, I think, from a coach's perspective. Again, not looking at specifically what cards were being spent on, or if they were being utilized to the purposes that we wanted them. But maybe we had a little bit more insight for the coach in those scenarios as well.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for your participation today. And on behalf of US Bank, we appreciate everyone who attended. We will be sending out through NACDA a link to the recording and the presentation that Tal presented with some contact information if anybody has additional questions. Otherwise, thank you all for attending. Thank you again, Ken and Katie, for presenting, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.